The morning chill settled over Chicago as the city began to stir awake. Steam rose from the street grates, buses hissed to a stop, and the sky carried the faint orange tint of dawn. Inside a small thrift store, tucked between an old laundromat and a bakery, a man named Ethan Brooks stood at the counter, clutching a tiny pink jacket. His hands were rough and worn from long hours of work, but his touch was gentle as he held the coat meant for his little girl, Lily. His heart felt heavier than the wind outside, yet he forced a smile. Lily, only 6, stood beside him in her faded sneakers, holding her stuffed rabbit. Her big blue eyes studied the jacket with longing, and when she looked up at her father, there was confusion. "Daddy," she whispered softly, her voice almost trembling, "why are we giving it back?" Ethan bent down, brushing a strand of her hair from her face. "Because, sweetheart," he said quietly, "we don't have enough this week. But Daddy promises we'll get you a new one soon." He smiled weakly, though inside his chest guilt pressed down like a stone. The cashier, an older woman with kind eyes, recognized him. He came often, never rude, always apologetic, always counting carefully before paying. She could see his struggle, the way he tried to keep dignity intact, even when his wallet betrayed him. "You sure, Ethan?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Yeah, I'm sure. Maybe next time." Lily's eyes fell to the floor and Ethan's hand tightened on hers. The little pink jacket lay folded on the counter, waiting to be returned, and the moment felt heavier than it should have been. In another part of the store, a tall woman stood near a rack of coats. She was out of place in this environment. Her grey cashmere coat looked far too elegant for a thrift store, and her polished heels clicked softly against the old floorboards. Her name was Amanda Hayes. At 38, she was one of the most successful CEOs in Chicago, known for her sharp business instincts and flawless professionalism. She had come simply to drop off a few boxes of unused clothing from her company's charity division before heading to her downtown office. Amanda wasn't the kind of woman who lingered. Her days were tightly scheduled, every minute planned, yet something made her stop. As she turned toward the counter, her eyes fell on the small scene unfolding before her. The single father returning his daughter's jacket, the little girl's sad expression, and the weight in the man's posture. It wasn't pity she felt, but something deeper, something that reminded her of a long-forgotten part of herself. For the first time in weeks, Amanda hesitated, standing completely still. Ethan cleared his throat, embarrassed by the attention around him. "Thank you," he said quietly to the cashier. "We'll come back another day." He turned to leave, taking Lily's small hand in his. But before he could reach the door, Amanda's voice broke the silence. "Excuse me," she said gently. Ethan turned, unsure if she was speaking to him. "Was that jacket for your daughter?" Amanda asked, her tone soft but direct. Ethan blinked, a little uncomfortable. Yes, Mom. It's okay, though. We don't really need it right now." Amanda took a step forward, her gaze shifting from Ethan to Lily. The little girl's cheeks were red from the cold, and her coat was clearly too small, the sleeves riding up to her wrists. "It's freezing out," Amanda said softly. "Every child deserves to be warm." Before Ethan could protest, she turned to the cashier and said, "Add it to my purchase, please." The cashier hesitated for a second, glancing at Ethan, then nodded slowly. "Of course." Amanda reached into her bag, pulled out her card and handed it over. Ethan frowned, his pride stirring. "Ma'am, that's very kind, but I can't accept that. I'm not asking for help." Amanda's expression didn't waver. "I know you're not," she said simply. "It's not help. It's a gift from one parent to another." Her tone carried no judgment, only sincerity. Ethan looked down at Lily, who was staring at the pink jacket again, her eyes wide and hopeful. He hesitated, then finally nodded. "Thank you," he murmured. "Truly." Lily's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Thank you, miss," she said brightly, clutching the jacket against her chest. Amanda smiled, a rare, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "You're very welcome, sweetheart," she said. She didn't stay to bask in the gratitude. Instead, she turned back toward the door, her heels echoing as she walked out into the brisk Chicago air. But something lingered in her mind. She had spent years building a company, chasing success, and yet that 5-minute encounter touched her more deeply than any corporate victory. It was as though life had quietly reminded her that success meant little if it didn't make you see others. Outside, snow had begun to fall lightly. Ethan helped Lily into her new pink jacket, zipping it up carefully. "It's perfect," he whispered, smiling as she twirled around. She laughed, the sound of pure joy echoing in the cold air. For the first time in weeks, he felt something other than exhaustion. He felt hope. "She was really nice, Daddy," Lily said, grinning. Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, she was. There are still good people out there." As they walked down the snowy street, Ethan didn't know that the woman who helped them would soon change his life forever. Amanda returned to her car, sitting quietly for a moment before starting the engine. She stared through the windshield, watching the father and daughter disappear down the street. Her mind drifted back to her own childhood. Her father had been a hard-working mechanic, her mother a waitress. There were times when they too had to choose between bills and groceries. She had built her empire to escape that life, but now, looking at the man's quiet dignity, she realized she had lost touch with what truly mattered. She whispered softly to herself, "Don't forget where you came from." Later that evening, Ethan tucked Lily into bed. The apartment was small but clean, a second-hand couch and an old heater humming by the window. Lily wore her new jacket, even as she lay under the blanket, refusing to take it off. "Daddy, she was like an angel," she mumbled sleepily. Ethan smiled, brushing her forehead. "Maybe she was, baby girl." When she drifted off to sleep, Ethan sat by the window, watching the snow fall. For once, he allowed himself to dream of better days, of warmth, of a future that might finally turn in his favor. The city outside glowed faintly under streetlights. Somewhere miles away, Amanda sat in her office, finishing late-night paperwork. But her mind wasn't on the contracts or figures. It was on that thrift store, that little girl, and her father. She didn't know why, but she felt certain their paths weren't meant to cross only once. Something about that moment had felt destined, as if life itself had quietly set something in motion. And while neither of them knew it yet, the act of kindness that morning had just opened the first chapter of a story that would change both their lives forever.